power and product rules, let's see. The power and the product rules. Power rule. Goes like this. If you have x to the a power and you raise that to the power of b, then that's going to equal x to the a times b. They call it the power rule, but I say it's a power to a power, more power to you. So you're going to multiply them. That's the power rule. Then you've got the product rule. And the product rule involves two variables, but they're the same variable, multiplied together. So let's say you've got x raised to the a power, and you're going to multiply that times an x raised to the b power. You're multiplying the x's, but what you ultimately end up doing is adding the exponents. So those are your two rules. Now let me explain a little further why they are the way they are. For the power rule, let's say you had an x to the second and you raised that to the third power. Now just what I know about exponents, exponents tell me to multiply something times itself that many times. So if I'm taking an x squared and I'm cubing it, that means I'm taking an x squared times an x squared times an x squared. And then of course each one of those x squareds is an x times 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 an x. And what I have is x times x times x times x times x times x, which is really x to the sixth power. But if you look at the exponents and you just multiply them, 2 times 3, 2 times 3, well, look at that, is 6. So you're really raising a power to a power, and they call it the power rule, but you just multiply. Now, the product rule, you're multiplying your x's, but you add your exponents. So for that one, let's say I have an x squared times an x to the third. The x squared is really an x times an x. The x to the third is x times x times x. And you're multiplying that. So what you're really doing is x times x times x times x times x, which is x times itself 5 times. But all I had to do was take my two exponents and add them together, and that gave me my exponent there. All right. Now, those are the two rules that we're going to be using to simplify this. And you're probably looking at this method and going, good God, what do I do? Well, you've got parentheses next to parentheses, which tells me to multiply. That would be a product rule. However, my second set of parentheses is raised to a power of 3. That would be the power rule. Which rule should I use first? Well, I'm going to go to order of operations for that. Exponents always come before multiplication. So we are going to start with the second set of parentheses raised to a power of 3. Now, inside my parentheses, I have a -2, an x cubed, a y cubed, and a z cubed. I'm actually going to use this power rule 3 times, one for each of the variables, but I'm also going to use that exponent of 3 on the -2, like I would any other day of the week. So let's just look at that piece first. If you had all of a -2 and you cubed it, that means you're taking a -2 times a -2 times a -2. Negative times a negative is a positive, positive times a negative is a negative, and 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. All right, now I've still got this first mess here. I haven't touched it. I'm just going to copy it down using my copying skills. And then the second set of parentheses, I went ahead and took the -2 and cubed it. That would be -8. I am now going to take my x cubed and raise it to the third power. So a power to a power, 3 times 3 is 9. So this will be x to the 9th. Then I'll do the same thing with the y cubed. If you have a y cubed and you cube it, a power to a power, you multiply. 3 times 3 is again 9, except it's now on the y. And then the z, same deal. Z to the third raised to the third is z to the 3 times 3, which is 9. And that's my power rule. But now when I go to do my parentheses times my parentheses, I'll be taking an x times an x, a y times a y, and a z times a z. I'm going to use this rule right here 3 times. But I also have coefficients. I'll just have to multiply those the way I normally do. You're going to take this negative sign, which technically is a negative, invisible 1, and you're going to multiply that times this -8. A -1 times a -8 is going to equal a +8. And then I'm going to use the fact that if you multiply an x times an x, you add the exponents. I'm going to take this x squared times this x to the 9th. I'm going to add the 2, and the 9. Add those together, and that's going to be 11. Then I'm going to take the y squared times the y to the 9th. I'm going to take the squared here and the 9 there, add those together, and that's y to the 11th. And then I'm going to take the z. Now, I don't see an exponent here, so that's really another invisible 1, because z to the first is just z. So you have to remember there's a 1 there. And I'm going to multiply it times the z to the 9th. So take this 1 and this 9 and add those together, and you get z to the 10th. It's not pretty, but that's my answer, and the fun part will be typing that in. I'm going to have to click on this 3 times every time I want to put in an exponent. And there you go.